Greetings, mathematicians of all ages. You'll notice my beginning font is a little smaller than normal. That's because we're combining two sections into one. The first is a slight extension of the last lesson, and the second one is the word problem section for the chapter. And it's a pretty straightforward lesson, so we should be able to get both of these in a reasonable amount of time. Alright, so let's start with dividing decimals by decimals, and before we do that, it probably makes sense to review what we did yesterday, which was dividing decimals by whole numbers. So we're going to start that way first and look at something like 13.62 divided by 6, or 6 into 13.62. And you'll remember for this, all we did was sing the song from yesterday. When dividing decimals, ignore the decimal point until the very end when you move it to the top. Ding! Right? So we take our 6 into 13 because it won't go into 1, right? We take it into 13, goes twice. We subtract, drop the 6, goes in twice again. Goes into 42 7 times. And then our decimal goes straight up, right? So 2.27. That's yesterday's lesson, okay? Today, the only extra little part is that we're going to divide decimals by decimals. And to do that, there's just one little extra step, okay? And we cover that step in our new version of our fourth jingle. We just add a little bit to the beginning. Before I tell you the jingle, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. And I'll just use the same problem I just used, other than the fact that I'm going to make this number a decimal now. Okay, so it was 13.62, and we did divided by 6 last time. This time I'm going to do 0.6, okay? Now, the way you do this is, before you start dividing, before you even start the process, what we got to do is make sure this number, called the divisor in division, we got to make sure that's a whole number. And what we're going to do is shift that decimal until it's after the final number in the divisor. So what we do is we take that decimal and we shift it over slightly. And now, if we shift the decimal in the divisor, we also have to do it in the dividend, which is the thing under the brackets. So now I'm going to take this decimal and shift it here. Okay? And now I'm just going to do the whole process again. 12, 1, 16, 2, 12. And once again we get 42. The 7 will go up there, and I'm done. The difference this time you'll notice is, since I shifted the decimal here and shifted the decimal here, now when I move it to the top, it's shifted over slightly. So that's the only extra step. And the adjustment we make to our jingle is, if you actually listen to the original In the Hall of the Mountain King, there's a suspended note that just kind of holds out before the actual song starts. So in the original it goes like, and so on. So what we're going to do is, with that note that was held out, we're going to add that little part in, and the part we're going to add in is making sure the divisor is a whole number, or making sure the divisor is a whole number. And we did that by shifting the decimal. So when we do that, the jingle sounds like this. Making sure the divisor is a whole number. When dividing decimals, ignore the decimal point until the very end when you move it to the top. Ding! So I'll just slow that down again so you can hear it. Making sure the divisor is a whole number. When divide, and so on. Okay? So I'll sing it once more. You should try to sing it with me. And if you need to rewind a couple times and sing it with me, feel free. So here it is again. Making sure the divisor is a whole number. When dividing decimals, ignore the decimal point until the very end when you move it to the top. Ding! So rewind that, listen to it, sing it as many times as you need to remember. Making sure the divisor is a whole number. Okay? And we do that by shifting the decimal. Okay? Let's look at another. So in this one, I'm actually going to do 0.07 into, let's just make it simple enough for now, into 0.154. Okay? And following, making sure the divisor is a whole number. To do that, I have to shift the decimal until it's after my decimal in the divisor. In this case, I shifted it twice, which means in the dividend, I have to shift it twice as well, and it's going to end up right there. And now, I just do it like I've been doing these all along. 7 goes in twice. Goes in twice. and ding, take it straight up. So that's the only difference, okay? The other part that might make this section slightly more challenging is that these divisors, they're going to give you some 2-digit numbers, and so what I'd recommend in those cases is some good calculator work. Here's a good example, something like this. 5.6 into 16.24. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is shift, obviously. We all know that. My decimal will be straight up there at the end, right? But now, chances are many of us don't have our 56's times tables memorized, right? So what I would do is, on my calculator, I know it has to go into 162. So I would do 162 divided by 56, and you're going to end up getting 2 point something. Okay, so you know it goes in 2 times without going over, and then I would use my calculator to do 2 times 56 to get 112, and then I subtract, and you'll find that it goes into 504 evenly, because I do 504 divided by 56. I find out that it actually goes in 9 times. And then you finish it up, right? Okay, and then I move my decimal to the top, ding. So that's a good option for using your calculator. If you have big numbers divided by big numbers in certain parts of it, I would just divide it, do 162 divided by 56, see what the whole number is in front of all the decimal stuff, and you know that's the number that goes on top, and then you can kind of do the rest as you go. Okay, so the only extra step for this lesson is making sure the divisor is a whole number, and you do that by shifting the decimal as many places as you need to in both the divisor and the dividend. Let's just do one more for good measure here. Let's do 0.05 into 0.33125. Nice long one. All right, why don't you pause, give it a shot. All right, so we shift twice. That's where it's going to end up being, right? 5 into 33 6 times. Try to make this fast here. Into 31 6 times. Into 12 twice. And into 25 5 times, right? And we move it straight up. Ding. Done. Okay? So, that's the first lesson. All right, time to move on to the second. So it's the word problem section for the chapter, too much or too little info. And to me, this should be a fairly obvious thing when you're reading word problems, is the fact that you should look for what's important and what's not. So I think probably a better title for this section, and why don't we just kind of start it over here because I think it's a better title, is carefully reading word problems. One of the issues is a lot of people read word problems very quickly. They say, well, there's a number here, a number here. They kind of grab all the numbers out of the word problem without actually knowing what they're supposed to be doing. And then they start, well, I think I'll multiply those or divide those. And it just doesn't end up making any sense to what the problem has to say. So when we carefully read word problems, it becomes obvious to us what's extra, or if we don't have enough in the first place. So let's take a look at a problem here. All right, so here's a word problem, and what I want you to do first is read this problem, pause the video and read it, and see if you can figure out if this is a too much or too little. If it is too little, try to write down what's missing. If it's too much, find the answer and then tell what's the extra stuff. All right, pause it, give it a shot. All right, so the problem says he bought 2 oranges for $1.50 total. Each orange weighed 5 ounces and came from Florida. He also bought 5 boxes of cereal for $20. How much did each orange cost? Hopefully you didn't just start throwing numbers down and doing, multiplication, division, whatever you're doing, because all that really matters in this entire problem is that he bought 2 oranges for $1.50, right? Since the final question asks how much did each orange cost? All I'm going to do is do $1.50 divided by 2, right? And this is a decimals divided by whole numbers problem because the divisor is already a whole number. So now I just go. 2 doesn't go into 1. It goes into 15 7 times. It goes into 10 5 times. And I'm done already, right? And then I move my decimal up. So each orange costs 75 cents. So there's going to be these problems with all kinds of extra stuff in them. And what you have to do is carefully read it to see what the actual valuable information is. All right, so we've done one that has too much information. Why don't we look at one where you're going to have to figure out what's missing? All right, so here's another word problem about Jim. He's planning a trip to Florida. Maybe he liked the oranges so much that he decided he had to go get his own straight from Florida. Anyway, he planned to drive 60 miles every hour. The first day he drove 12 hours, and he completed the trip on day 2. How many miles did he drive? Okay, so pause a minute, see if you can figure out what's the main piece of information that we're missing. So this is a too little information problem. See if you can figure out what's missing. All right. We can definitely figure out how many miles he drove on the first day since he's driving 60 miles per hour and he drove 12 hours on the first day. The problem is he still plans on driving 60 miles an hour the second day, but we don't know how long he drove, and we have to know how long he drove in order to find out the total number of miles. So that's the piece missing in this problem. So again, this section is about too much or too little information. I like to call it carefully reading word problems. If they give you extra stuff, make sure you're using the right information. And if you don't have enough, being able to pinpoint what exactly you need to solve the problem. All right, that's all for today. See you next time.